Hey guys, June here, and as you requested, I'm doing a Q&A video to celebrate getting 5,000 subscribers. As you can probably tell, I've got a little bit of a cold, so if I sound kind of stupid in this video, I apologize for that. But you guys sent me tons and tons of questions, so I'm anxious to get started with that. It's probably going to be a long one, given how much is here. I consolidated them a little bit, but it's definitely going to be a pretty substantive video, so strap in. So starting off with some simple demographics type stuff. My real name is Alan. I'm 25 years old. Somebody asked if I have a girlfriend. I have a wife. I'm married. This is her right there. We've been married, let's see, June makes our 5th anniversary. So we've been married a freaking long time. I'm currently living in Maine, which is northeastern United States, for those of you who might not be from America. Somebody asked if RuneScape's my main income. I assume they mean from the YouTube channel. It's definitely not. I actually make almost nothing from that. I just upgraded my monitor, which you'll see in a little bit. Somebody asked for a battle station picture. And all of the money that I've ever made from YouTube paid for about half of my new monitor. So I'm definitely appreciative of that, but I could not live on that kind of money. My current job, I'm working a 3rd shift at a group home for people with co-occurring disorders, which is just what we call people who have a mental health issue and a substance abuse issue, so people who have like chronic depression as well as like alcoholism. What is a Junesong? So when display names first came out, my favorite song at the time was the Junesong Provision by Coheed and Cambria. I'll put that link right over here. It's a really good song. It was my favorite at the time, and that was the inspiration behind the name. Do you have hobbies other than RuneScape? Yeah, I've got a couple of them. First of all, music's a big one. All of the music on my channel, like the intro music and everything, is stuff that I've written and recorded myself. I've got the keyboard. I'm not actually very good at that, but guitar is my main instrument. I've got a few of those. And then on top of that, fitness is a big one. I just kind of work out for the health aspect of it. As you can see, I've got like dumbbells all over the floor throughout here. I live kind of a sedentary lifestyle. I mean, RuneScape being a big hobby means I'm sitting on my ass in front of a desk a lot, and then I have a desk job as well, so if it weren't for the fitness thing, I would probably get no exercise whatsoever and be 300 pounds and probably at risk of a heart attack. Next one's a tough one. Favorite movies, TV show, and music. Movies, I really like anything. Horror movies and comedy in particular. I also like things that are intellectually stimulating, so like nature documentaries, any kind of physics documentary, as long as it's not like really sensationalized and dramatized. Some movies that come to mind, Kingsman was a recent one. It's kind of like a comedic spoof on British spy movies. That's really good. Kung Fury, which is on Netflix for American users now. It's like half an hour long. Definitely watch that if you get a chance. Or movies like The Spirit. Same thing kind of for TV. I like animated stuff like Futurama, South Park, and Family Guy. That's both kind of clever and funny, but also intellectually stimulating. Also Black Mirror. The recent season of Black Mirror just went up on Netflix as well, at least for American users, and it's just like so good. Definitely worth watching. As for music, I like pretty much everything there as well. Majorly rock music, metal music, post-rock, any kind of instrumental. I like classical music, electronic stuff, and even a few rappers like Lil Dicky, Eminem, or Hobson. Who's your favorite non-RuneScape YouTuber? That's a tough one too. I've been watching a lot of these really old videos made by this guy named Theoretical Bullshit. He's actually a soap opera actor named Scott Clifton, but in his free time, at least a few years ago, he was making videos on kind of philosophy and belief behind religion. He's just like a really brilliant guy, so those are very stimulating to watch. Do you play any other games, and if so, what kinds? Of course, RuneScape's my only MMORPG, but I definitely play a lot of console games. I'm still kind of a nerd for the RPG thing, so everything from Bethesda. Morrowind's actually one of my 2 choices for favorite games of all time, the other being Final Fantasy VII. Things like BioShock, Fallout, all that stuff, I just love it. Kingdoms of Amalur was awesome. I do play stuff like first-person shooters and puzzle games if we have company over and things, but they're not stuff that I play on my own. What made you get started doing videos? So a couple of years ago, I was watching an Araxor guide by Uncle Zunky, and with absolutely no disrespect intended to him, his videos are awesome, and he definitely deserves to have as many subs as he does. He's very entertaining, and he seems like a nice guy. There was a lot of important information missing from it. And that's nothing that's unique to Uncle Zunky. Pretty much everybody that makes boss guides glosses over a lot of stuff. And I thought that was kind of kind of important to include all that extra information because it gives you the ability to predict what the boss is going to do next most of the time. So for example, with Araxor, knowing how many attacks were between special attacks, just as an example. And I thought in general that would make people a lot more successful and they would have a lot easier time learning the bosses. So I made the YouTube channel with the hope of making boss guides that were a little bit more intricate in terms of the boss mechanics themselves. And then when I made the DPS for Dummies series, that was a big turning point for the channel because it turned out not only did people not understand the mechanics of bosses, but even as far down as just using abilities themselves, people just kind of thought that they were all relatively the same, and they knew, well, this one's a combo and this one's not a combo, but they didn't look at, this one's way stronger than this one, and I should use these two in particular in this order to get the boost from the one and to the other one. And so even just communicating little bits of information like that are really helpful for people in changing the fundamental way that they do bosses. And so my goal has only really ever been to help people out. I'm not the best PVMer by any stretch of the imagination. People like Lit blow me out of the water, but I'm decent at it, and my only goal really was to communicate what I know to you guys, because there's no reason that you can't be as good as me or better potentially, and I would definitely like to see that happen. What inspired you to be a psychologist? It's a good question, and if I could go back, I'm not sure I would do that a second time. Some days I feel like I might have gotten more fulfillment if I had gone to be a biology teacher or a physics teacher or something instead. But when I was coming toward the end of my high school career and I was deciding what I was actually going to go to college for, there was a lot of mental health stuff going on with my family. My mom had a suicide attempt around my 16th birthday, and I spent about a year caring for my sister as a parental figure. Her and I were living alone because it just wasn't stable at home and it wasn't healthy for either of us to be in that situation. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what motivates people to behave irrationally, especially in ways that not only jeopardize their own safety but the safety of other people in their family and their relationships with others in general. And that's pretty much what got me into the field. Since then I've branched out a little bit and started thinking more about what motivates people to be religious and how we formulate beliefs and protect them from criticism in different circumstances, but that's what got me started in the first place, at least. What other courses and skills are involved apart from Intro to Psych? Well, there's a lot of stuff apart from psychology that you end up doing in school. We did big courses on physiology and pharmacology, especially with my focus on addiction. It was important to learn about different substances that people abuse and how they affect the human body and reward pathways and things like that that lead to addiction. And you're also kind of obligated to do some high-level math courses like statistics, in particular for people who ever go into the research side of psychology. You need to actually publish your findings and ensure that things are statistically significant, so you need to know your way around the math. How did you end up at your current job? It's actually kind of a long story. Part of actually studying psychology involves an internship, and my internship was originally at a sober living facility that was it was a couple of years off to shut down. Most of the stuff gets funded through grant money, and when the grant money runs out, they either repurpose their facility or they shut down and open somewhere else, or there's a lot of complicated funding stuff that goes into it. But anyways, I was studying under this guy, and one of the other employees at the program died unexpectedly from some kind of a heart-related problem that was this like weird side effect of dental issues he had or something like that. So they had this like really abrupt opening, and one of the program administrators asked if I would like to kind of consolidate my internship into an entry-level position and start getting paid as part of like a relief worker sort of thing. So I did that for about 6 months while I finished out my internship, and then I just kind of continued after my internship ended, and I continued doing the work there until the program shut down. And then the supervisor of my supervisor there, who was actually working at several different programs, had an opening at one of our other programs for an overnight position it was part-time. I think it was 30 hours a week. And because my job was ending and I had kind of been a little bit irresponsible, I hadn't tracked and planned ahead to move to a different job as this place was shutting down, I took that, and then a few months after that, one of the other workers at this new program actually showed up to work intoxicated, even though it was a substance abuse facility. It's a rehab. He showed up drunk. Completely ridiculous. You can't make this stuff up. But anyway, so his position vacated. His position was a full-time position, and so I took his, and they filled my part-time position, and I've been working there for like 5 years now. As a psychologist, you probably hear a lot of stories. Have any stuck with you? Well, as you'd probably expect when you're talking about people who are coming into facilities for addiction or mental health related problems, they're not coming from super happy childhoods. So most of the stories that I hear are related to past trauma and definitely not something that sticks with you, at least in a good way, and not something that I would want to drag you guys down by sharing. How many girls did you pull in psych class? Don't lie to me, June. I was actually engaged to my current wife already while I was in college. The only reason I actually included this question was because I have kind of a funny story. While I was in school, I was still working a part-time job as just a cashier, minimum wage position at a local store to try and fund my way through school a little bit. And one day, this pair of women came up to me. One was probably in her early 30s and one was probably between 18 and 21. And they were both relatively attractive, and come to find out through the conversation that it was actually a mother and her daughter, and they wanted me to, when I got out of work, go and have a party with them, just the two of them, which I assume is a proposition for a threesome, which is disturbing and arousing in very, very strange ways, but I was engaged, so I unfortunately had to turn them down. Did you do well in school while playing RuneScape, and if so, do you have any tips for scapers about time management at university? Well, the first and most obvious thing is that you just have to decide what your top priority is. Your schoolwork should come first, and you can always just do something AFK on RuneScape, go to Sarenstones or whatever. There's plenty of stuff that doesn't require any kind of attention whatsoever that still allows you to get those gains while not sacrificing your ability to get your work done. What is a day in the life of a psychologist like? So I'm still doing overnight work, so my day starts around 5 p.m. when I wake up, and I have breakfast, make some coffee or something, and then usually work out 5 days a week. From that, I'll maybe kick around and do something on RuneScape for like a half an hour before I have to go into work. It's about an hour commute for me. I work pretty far away from where I live because the property prices out here are really cheap. And work is a 10-hour shift. I do my standard thing, go in, I actually administer medications to people because it's their bedtime. I end up doing a little bit of paperwork, notes and stuff. On my way home, I mean, it's another 1-hour commute, and after a 10-hour shift, it's pretty much bedtime when I get home. And then that's only 4 days a week, so that gives me 3 nice free days to RuneScape, make videos, and all that sort of thing. What's your opinion of Freud? He was nuts. Do you have any advice for relationships and making them work? Yeah, it's a pretty cookie-cutter cliche bullshit, but the most important thing is just being honest with each other. As long as you're being who you are and you're expecting the same thing of your partner, if you guys are compatible, then it's going to work out fine. You can work through anything. But if you're trying to like obfuscate who you are to make the other person like you, you're going to end up trying to like foster a relationship that's not actually founded on real things, and it's just never going to work well. Being a psychologist must be draining. How do you stay so positive in your videos? Well, I imagine it's a lot like being a doctor where you're having patients who are dying pretty frequently. We actually legitimately have individuals who die at the facility, most of the time to things like suicide. And that can be draining. You kind of develop a tolerance for it over time, or you get burned out and you change fields. So you dissociate a little bit, you kind of stop thinking about them so much as people, or at least not developing really strong emotional attachments to them, because that's not emotionally healthy for you as a provider of care. So I leave work at work, and when I come home and I make videos, I'm doing something that I love, I'm helping people, and so why not be positive? How do you balance time for RuneScape, a job, videos, real life, etc.? Well, being that I'm working overnights, I actually do get to play RuneScape quite a bit at night. Don't tell anybody. And I set aside time on a weekend to make at least one video. If I have a shorter video that I can make, like one of the psychology videos, I'll try to throw those together on weeknights before I go to work. But other than that, I prioritize spending time with my wife. We don't do too much apart from the job and the RuneScape stuff, so it's pretty easy to balance all the time together as long as you remember what things are important and you make a plan for this is when I'm going to make a video, and then, things like that. How's your family doing since your sister passed away? Well, I haven't actually seen them too much. I've hung out with my parents a couple of times, but we don't get along super well. They've retreated very, very far into religious stuff. I personally don't believe in God, and I don't follow any kind of a religion, and they make kind of a strong point to pressure that stuff onto me, which is kind of frustrating. So we get together once in a while to do like, you know, dinner and a movie or something, but I don't associate with them too much. I'm still having a rough time with it. You know, I think about her a lot. I had a rough time with the funeral. I made a video to actually close the funeral out that I spent a lot of time on, and I thought it was really great. But the funeral was hosted at my parents' church, and the audio system that they had at the church was so bad that you couldn't actually hear any of the stuff that she was saying. I kind of incorporated some video clips that she had made on Facebook, as well as a cover song that we recorded together. I'll put a link to that over here, the whole video that I made. But you couldn't hear it, and that was pretty frustrating because it meant a lot to me. But every day it gets a little bit easier. It'll probably never be easy, but we're getting through at least. Have you always been good at public speaking, or is that something you had to work on? Well, I don't actually know that I'm that good at public speaking. Talking to a camera is quite a bit different than getting up and talking to people, especially because if I had to, I could record this as many times as I needed to until what I was saying came out eloquently and felt comfortable. But it's not something that has ever been too difficult. As Matt Dillahunty said, the key to being a good public speaker is just don't bullshit anybody. As long as you're talking about things that you actually believe and you feel comfortable with, it's pretty easy to communicate those thoughts. How long does the video take to make? Depends a lot on what kind of a video it is. So like the psychology and RuneScape ones, or any kind of a conceptual video that's just me talking over a couple of slides that I made in Paint, those only take a couple of hours. The more complicated boss guides, like the bomb tanking guide, that took me months to make. Like the Telos guide, the Araxor guide, those at least take, you know, anywhere from like 20 to 50 hours to make them well, just because the editing is quite a bit more complicated. Have you ever thought about expanding this channel by doing things like vlogs or making videos for other games? I definitely wouldn't do that on this channel. Just, I really like things being organized, so this channel is going to definitely stay dedicated to RuneScape specifically. I have actually just started another channel this weekend. It's going to be kind of a vlog thing where it gives me a medium to talk about stuff that I find interesting, whether that's like psychology, philosophy, religion, science, anything like that. If you would like to follow me there, you can click this link right here. It'll take you over to that channel. There's no videos up yet, but I will start doing that very, very soon. Those should be interesting, hopefully, and I would definitely like to get your feedback on those if you get the opportunity. As for game-related videos, I definitely wouldn't do those on this channel either, and I don't have any plans to do anything like that. Like I said, RuneScape's my only MMORPG. I do play a lot of console games, but people really latch on to console games pretty quickly, and there's lots of great content in terms of guides and stuff for those, so there's no real big need for me to do that at this time. I will leave it open to the future if any opportunity presents itself, but no current plans. Do you play old school? Why or why not? I played it a little bit on release, and I very quickly remembered why I don't play it. I played RuneScape when old school RuneScape was RuneScape, so I've been playing RuneScape since like 2003. I was there all through the experience of 07 and such, and it just doesn't have a lot of appeal to me anymore. Obviously, when EOC was released, it was released very prematurely and it was mangled, but they've done a lot of really great work to it since then, and the combat system is so much more fun now than it was in 07. There's still plenty of polishing that they could do to make it a little bit more consistent and more fun, but it's definitely much more entertaining than 07 for me now. 07 seems to me like mostly for PvP, which is something I've never been into, so I'm sticking with RS3. What's your favorite anime? Well, this actually kind of relates a little bit to the e-dating videos that I was just doing, but Sword Art Online is a phenomenal show, and it's a lot deeper than people give it credit for. It tackles a pretty fundamental question of what it means to have relationships in a virtual world, and it's very intellectually stimulating. So if you guys haven't seen that, I definitely would recommend you do so. At least for American users, it is currently on Netflix. What is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is whatever the hell you want it to be. Meaning, very much like purpose, kind of presupposes the existence of a mind giving a thing purpose or meaning. For example, a rock doesn't have a purpose or a meaning, but if I use that rock to prop open a door, the purpose of that rock is now as a doorstop. So people get caught up on this idea of like, what is the ultimate meaning of life? And that absolutely makes no sense, because meaning is entirely subjective by definition, And so your meaning of life is whatever you choose for that meaning to be. Next question is, do you prefer cats or dogs? I've had both in my life. I had as many as 3 cats at one point, but I think I prefer dogs. I actually currently have a dog. This is my dog, Riley. She's a very, very good girl. And there she goes. She's a couple years old. My wife and I got her on our 2nd anniversary. We picked her up from an animal shelter. She was a stray dog from Georgia. They picked her up down there, and they put her in this program called Paws and Stripes, where they bring a bunch of stray dogs into the prison system, and a dog trainer works with the prisoners, and the prisoners train the dogs, and by proxy the prisoners get some kind of rehabilitation effect from that. And so she's super sweet, and I guess my reasoning behind liking dogs more is they're a little bit more emotive of an animal. I mean, cats are nice, they're very snuggly, and they can be friendly, but they kind of boil down to feed me and leave me alone. They're a little bit apathetic about people, whereas dogs are much more social animals. Next, I got asked how I feel about a lot of different things like feminazis, atheists, Christians, Muslims, and different ideologies like that. In that respect, rather than just kind of burn a bunch of bridges and attack all these different things, I just say that I don't have a negative opinion of people, so Christians or Muslims I don't necessarily have issue with. I definitely disagree with a lot of ideology, especially with feminazis and Muslims and things like the suppression of free speech. Those are important issues that I disagree with them very strongly on, but all people have a right to have their opinion, and what's important is that we can talk about it and kind of disagree and come to resolutions on that without kind of infantilizing adults, as would be the case with feminazis, or with executing deadly force against people who might disagree with you, as might be the case with extremist Muslims. I'm personally an atheist, but people like me are in a pretty small minority, so it seems that whether or not religion is true to the side, it seems that there is a natural tendency for people to believe in gods and to interpret agency in things, and I may talk about that more on that other channel that I talked about a little while ago, but I don't have a negative opinion of people in general. What IRL achievement are you most proud of? Well, the answer for that depends on how far you mean by IRL. Personally, I was really excited to be nominated for the Golden Gnome Awards, even though I didn't win. And I know that's obviously RuneScape associated, so if you mean completely separate from RuneScape, it would probably be the long-term success of my marriage. I know that's kind of a cheesy, cliche thing to say as well, but like every other person in a relationship, we've been through hard times, and as adults, we've been very responsible and mature, and we've worked through a lot together. And I think we've established a really strong bond as a result, and I'm very proud of that. Personal stuff, I'm pretty much, if it's not the Golden Gnomes, then it would be something related to schooling, getting a degree, or whatever. But I've never done anything, I've never cured cancer, for example, so that's a tough question. What car do you currently drive, and what is your dream car? I drive a piece of shit right now, a 1998 Kia Sophia. It's pretty much on the verge of death. I've also got a 2001 Volvo S70, also on the verge of death. I was driving that before. That's in need of some repairs. My wife and I don't make tons of money. I actually work for a non-profit agency, so I get relatively good benefits from work, but I don't make tons and tons of money. So in order to actually own a house and stuff, we had to be relatively stingy, and that means not buying new cars, for example. So we buy old junky crap, and we drive it until they no longer work, and then we scrap them. As for a dream car, I've never been one of those people that kind of fetishizes fancy cars. They're all about practicality for me, so assuming I had unlimited money, I would probably go for one of the newer model Tesla cars, the new electric cars put out by Elon Musk. Those are pretty appealing, and I'm kind of interested in them, but that's far beyond my means at the moment. What life lessons have you learned from RuneScape? Well, there's one really important one, and it's something that I run into a lot. I hope my YouTube channel conveys this to some of you guys, and that idea is that basically there's really no limit to what you can achieve if you dedicate yourself and you're persistent. So one thing I run into all the time having PM open, people say, I tried Araxor, I watched your guide, and I can't get it. And I'll ask them, okay, where are you struggling? Like, what's getting you killed, for example, and how many times did you try? And more often than not, I hear, well, I tried twice this morning, and I die on phase 3 or something. And I'll have to say, like, getting to phase 3 on your second attempt is a very, very good second attempt. You shouldn't be expecting to be successful at a very difficult boss your first or second time trying it. I have this one particular friend who I try to help out with PVM-related stuff all the time, and he does things like Yakimaru and Araxor with a defender. I was like, well, you shouldn't be doing that with a defender, you know, you should use an offhand weapon and then switch to a shield for whatever your shield ability is and then switch back. So like at Yakimaru, for example, just do your weapon thing, and then when the geysers come out, you know, switch to your shield, resonance, and then switch back. And he says, that's too hard for me. And it's like, well, you know, you're not going to ever get good at it without trying to do it, and you shouldn't expect that it's going to be easy the first 5 times you try it. But everybody who knows how to do it now, at one point, didn't know how to do it and needed to practice that. And that same principle applies to everything that you'll pretty much ever do. You know, nobody is fundamentally better or worse at anything than other people are, and so every skill ever is really just a matter of practice, and you should try to remember that whenever possible. Next, I was asked to show off my battle station, so this is my desk. Excuse the mess. The small monitor on the right is what I was using to play up until just a few days ago, but like I said earlier, I upgraded to that new larger monitor, partly with the money I made from the YouTube channel, so thank you guys all for that. I'm not particularly tech savvy, so my cousin actually built the PC for me when I was getting started with the YouTube channel, and I don't know the specs for it. The only other thing of interest in the picture is the golden gnome painting hanging from my board in the back there. My wife actually painted that for me when I lost the golden gnome award, which I think is pretty savage. Next one might have been the most commonly asked question, which was Hillary or Trump, and I'm probably going to burn some bridges with this, but I will echo the sentiment from pretty much everyone in the United States right now, in that both candidates are garbage. But there's this kind of false equivalence going on in terms of political coverage that I think is absolutely ridiculous. Hillary sucks in the sense that standard politicians suck. You can never really tell whether they are meaningfully conveying what their own objectives are for their campaign. They are just pandering because they want to be elected, and they tell us what we want to hear, and that's definitely a problem. The whole email scandal thing was naive of her. Apparently it was found that it was not technically against the law, but it was irresponsible and something that you definitely wouldn't respect in a leader. On the other hand, Donald Trump is an idiot and an asshole and a narcissist, and he's a bigot and a racist and a misogynist, and I know those few words have lost a lot of their meaning because of their overuse by the regressive left, but he's one of the few cases where this is actually a legitimate criticism of his character. He quite literally looks down on women and minorities, and it's ridiculous. I mean, he's so stupid that he had the wherewithal to suggest that people who were immigrating from Mexico weren't individuals working under their own volition to try and improve their quality of life by moving to a country with a better quality of life, but some kind of like conspiracy of the Mexican government to round up their criminals and their racists and send them to the United States. It's so foolish on its face, it's ridiculous. And the fact that he is actually a contender for the President of the United States has made us a worldwide laughingstock, and frankly the fact that a portion of the United States supports him is an embarrassment. If you could add one update to RuneScape, what would it be? I would like to see an overhaul of the practice mode system for bosses with 3 main goals. First of all, I would like to see you not have to use your own supplies, because just for that reason I don't think anybody actually uses practice mode. You save yourself a little bit of money if you die, but the cost of overloads, the cost of potions and prayer and food and everything, you're still spending a lot of money just to practice this boss without even the potential possibility of actually succeeding at a kill and making money on the loot. The second thing I'd like to see is some way for you to select what phase of a boss you're going to do. So, for example, you could set Telos to 500% enrage and go directly to phase 5 so that you could practice very specific parts of the fight rather than having to go all the way through the fight in order to get extra practice on some specific area you might be having difficulty. And the third thing, which would be difficult to code in, and I have no experience coding, so I don't even know if this is possible, but I would like to see, for example, like at Virago, if you wanted to learn how to bomb tank, some way for them to code in kind of dummy players so that you would have a base tank and DPS people as kind of just like NPCs that were in the fight, so that you by yourself could practice a specific role without having to get your friends together to do the practice mode with you. Alright, let's do some like lightning round type questions. Would you rather fight 10 imp-sized krills or 1 krill-sized imp? Krill being the Zamorak God Wars dungeon boss. I would definitely like to see 1 krill-sized imp. That would be fun. I like big enemies. Do board games make your adrenaline pump if it's a close match? Not really. I'm kind of a boring, level-headed person. Sugar ring or custard donuts? Definitely sugar ring. Are you attentive to detail in real life like you are in RuneScape? Yes. Do you think pineapple belongs on pizza? Yes, as long as there's also bacon or ham on it. Has to have that, otherwise it's terrible. What languages do you speak? Just English. I took like 5 or 6 years of Spanish in high school and college, and somehow I can barely speak it at all. I can ask like how to get to the bathroom or the library, and very little beyond that. Have you ever real-world traded? No. Are you autistic? Probably not. Chunky or smooth peanut butter? It depends. Crunchy I like in like sandwiches, but smooth is important if you're making like protein shakes or something. How do you feel about Ken Bone? I really like his mustache. What's your all-time favorite song? Probably Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the only one that I don't lose interest in after a little while. How tall are you? I'm really short. I'm like 5'6". Pepsi or Coke? Definitely Coke. Nobody ever has a rum and Pepsi. Give me a break. What's your favorite sport? Mixed martial arts? What superpower would you be if you could have any? I don't know if it counts, but I would like to have like a Superman level of kind of physical strength so that you couldn't be killed unless you kind of wanted to. That would give me the opportunity to live as long as I wanted. What does your wife do for a living? She is the department manager at a local store. Are you open to people about playing RS in real life? Yeah, I know a lot of people are embarrassed about playing RuneScape and don't mention it to friends and family and stuff. I'm not sure what that's all about. I'm not embarrassed about it. What video are you most proud of? I'm torn between 2. The bomb tanking guide, first of all, I'm most proud of, I think, because it was so much went into making it, and there's just no other comparison for it on YouTube as far as I can tell. I mean, I've watched quite a few bomb tanking guides, and most of them are just garbage in comparison. No offense intended to anybody who might have made one, obviously, but also for just the whole DPS for Dummies basics things, because I think those have helped the most people. If you could live off YouTube, would you? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, if I could quit my job, that would give me the opportunity to make videos much more frequently, and I could help more people, and not only that, but I enjoy doing this much more than I actually enjoy working, even though this, in a respect, could be called working. So, if I could, I would, definitely. Do you regret the amount of time you've spent in-game as you got older? No, this comes up a lot. I hear people talk about how maybe they have 300 plus days dedicated to RuneScape and they feel like they wasted a huge portion of their life, but what matters is we're really doing a leisure activity, and if we weren't doing RuneScape, what else would we be doing? Would we actually be learning other languages or instruments or something, or would we be sitting around watching television or movies? Whether or not something is a waste of time is really a subjective thing, and all of the time that I've spent on RuneScape, I've enjoyed it, so I certainly don't regret any of that. What would you do if you woke up and somebody was trying to grill your nipples? I would ask them to take me out to dinner first. Which is scarier, dark rooms or gingers? Definitely dark rooms, because really the fear of darkness is the fear of the unknown, and whatever you don't know might be quite a bit scarier than gingers. Cake or pie? Don't you dare say both. Definitely pie. You can make much more interesting pies. My favorite, strawberry rhubarb. If you had to fight 25 cats or 25 dogs, including big versions, i.e. wolves or tigers, what would you pick, assuming they were chosen randomly? I would pick cats because wolves and dogs tend to be pack-hunting predators, and that seems to be quite a bit more dangerous than cats, which are stalking-type predators, but I could protect myself from that. Have you ever traveled, and if so, where? Well, I was born in Maine, and I currently live in Maine, but I actually spent a couple of years living in Florida. I got, like, a scholarship thing to a private school down there when I was, like, 12 because I had ranked some high IQ or something. I also went to Niagara Falls for my parents' wedding anniversary or something when I was a child, but I don't remember that at all. And apart from that, I really haven't been anywhere interesting. I went to Pennsylvania to a town called Intercourse, which is, you know, I mean, you get good t-shirts there, obviously, but that was to visit Amish cultures because my mother was into that for some reason. I didn't find that particularly interesting, but if Trump becomes president, I may be finding myself abroad somewhere. Did you watch guides when you were getting started with RuneScape? Well, I actually started in 2003, and there was no YouTube or anything back then. At least 12-year-old me didn't know anything about that. So guides came in the form of stuff like on RuneHQ and Tippet and things like that, but generally no, I was kind of self-directed, and the game was much less complex back then, so you didn't really need guides for most things. Buddy asks, what's your favorite question? My favorite question is why, and that's because why is the most versatile and often a very meaningful question. It can be misapplied if you're asking for an intention in places where intention doesn't exist, but for example, you can take a very simple statement like the sky is blue and ask why, and you can say, well, it's because of Rayleigh scattering, and you could say why. Well, Rayleigh scattering is a result of these quantum effects and these different things that happen, and you can ask why over and over and get to some really fundamental philosophical bedrock. And that's often why when 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds ask why repeatedly, adults tend to get irritated because we reach a point where we actually don't know the answer to things, and that can cause some cognitive dissonance for us. But that makes it a very, very interesting question. How did you find the time to trim while working? Well, like I said earlier, because it's overnight work, I actually get to play at work quite frequently. What's the first MMO you've ever played? That was RuneScape. And the only other MMO that I've ever played was Diablo 2, if you can consider that an MMO. Do you have a cherished childhood teddy bear? No, I actually never associated with objects in that kind of way. I'm much more associated with experiences. My favorite thing to do as a kid around the age where someone would normally have a teddy bear was to go on walks in the forest with my parents, and I would collect stuff like mushrooms and other flora and take it home and use books to identify it, and if they were edible I would try to make like food with them. Sometimes it turned out good, sometimes it would turn out bad, but even the child me was intelligent enough to never misidentify anything, to eat anything poisonous and get myself killed, which was good. Might have been a bit irresponsible of my parents to put that kind of trust in me at that age, but, you know, seemed to turn out okay at least. How did you meet your wife? Before she moved over to the current store that she's working at and became the manager, she worked at a different store in the same chain, and her and I were just like entry-level floor workers at the time. This was before I went to school and everything, so we were just, you know, minimum wage workers on the sales floor, and that was where I met her. How do you feel about the slow or delayed combat fixes like the changes to Dreadnips or the Cade heal nerf? They bother me quite a bit, especially in cases where they last so long that they become really central parts of boss strategies, like Cade heal became for raids. Hopefully, they just put up the new Combat Council forum for players to post the things that are being used this way for them to be addressed more quickly. I'm going to reserve judgment on how effective that is until we see some changes as a result of that. But I think there's actually kind of a paradigm issue with Jagex where there's a lot of stuff in-game where there are really serious problems, especially on the quality of life side for players. Jagex doesn't seem to care about those too much more so on putting out new content to the point where the new stuff that's coming out is sometimes just like dead on release content or is so buggy that it's not even playable. And like most players, I've seen this on Reddit quite a bit, people would very much like to see a couple of months go by without any actual new content being released in-game. Just clean up and streamline stuff that's already in-game. And hopefully we see that a little bit more with that new Combat Council forum. There have been a lot of really great suggestions on there already, like the buff to Concentrated Blast and some changes to hybrid armor that I would definitely like to see. So we'll see what happens. Just to wrap up, I got a couple of questions about RuneScape related stuff, even though this is supposed to not be a RuneScape Q&A video. Do you align with a god faction and why? I personally like Zeros. I think he's the most interestingly deep character, and there's quite a bit we don't know about him still. And even though he was played as evil for quite a long time, the more we learn about him from the Fate of the Gods series and things, it seems like he actually has the best interests of his subservience at heart, even though he kind of comes off as very apathetic. When did you start playing and what got you started? Like I said, it was 2003. This was actually shortly after I moved down to Florida for that private school, and my family was moving around so much. My dad's a carpenter, or was a carpenter, and part of what we were doing was he would buy like fix-em-up houses, and he would spend a bunch of time refurbishing different parts of the house and sell it at a higher value. And then we would move, and so we would do it over and over again. We moved like 20 times throughout my childhood. And so that hopping around all the time made it really difficult to keep and maintain friends. So I made some friends in Florida who played RuneScape. And then when we moved again, that gave me the opportunity to keep in touch with people that I'd made friends with, and that's been kind of a common theme throughout most of my life. How much do you play, and how does that impact your happiness? I play quite a bit, probably upwards of 40 hours a week between home and at work. And how does that impact my happiness? If that's supposed to be like a trying to imply that I'm addicted to the game and that I don't actually enjoy it. That's definitely not the case. I wouldn't play if I didn't enjoy it. There's up and down times, especially when new content comes out. I'm quite a bit more happy, and I enjoy playing that more than when I'm just working on kind of monotonous goals, but I definitely enjoy it. And last but not least, when did you start PVMing? Well, this is probably back in about 2008. I joined a clan called Hybrid Theory, which is named after the Linkin Park album, which is garbage. And we would just stay up like super late at night. I was living by myself at the time, so this was how I got social interaction. Most of the time I was kind of preoccupied with work. I made some really great friends, and we would just do God Wars Dungeon all night. And this was back when God Wars Dungeon was like end game boss content. And so I made some really great friends, and I'm actually still friends with all those people. Most of them have quit RuneScape still, but I talk to them on Facebook and stuff. So yeah, it's been PVM ever since then. So that's it for the questions, guys. Thanks all of you for posting those. So like I said, we're doing a giveaway. I did the RNG thing, and our winner was Siggy SGE. I will be getting in touch with you in the comments to find out what your RSN is and pay you off. Congratulations on winning. Bad luck for all the rest of you who did not. Thanks all of you guys for submitting these questions, for subscribing, and for being in touch on the comments and everything and messages. I really love interacting with you guys. Like I said earlier 100 times in this video, all I ever wanted was to be helpful, and it's an honor to be able to make these videos and to get the feedback from you guys. I love all of you, no homo. I will definitely do something to celebrate getting 10K subs when we get there, so stick around with me for that. Thank you guys always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.